Hey KidStep friends, welcome back. We are in our final week of our series in Philippians called Resilient Joy. I cannot believe that we have already gotten through the entire book of Philippians. But as we always do, let's go all the way back to the beginning and review what we've learned so far. Week 1, we talked about, what is the book of Philippians? And we learned that it's a letter written by Paul, who was in prison at the time, to the church of Philippi, encouraging them and challenging them to keep going. You see, the church of Philippi, or the Philippians, they had been off to a really good start. The church was growing and amazing things were happening. And then things kind of started not going quite as they'd planned. And so Paul is writing to encourage them to continue forward with resilient joy, joy that does not get affected by what was happening around them. And Paul should know, Paul was writing this from prison. And he wasn't in prison because he was a bad guy. Paul was in prison because people didn't like that he was teaching about Jesus. And so Paul is saying we can still be joyful, even when we're in prison, because we get to tell other people about Jesus. But we'll get to that part, right? Because then he spends a chunk of his letter talking about his overflowing gratitude, his thankfulness for their partnership, their ministry, their prayers, their friendship, right? And so we were challenged to be kids who have a grateful heart, who overflow with thankfulness or gratitude. Paul jumps then into his letter and he talks about how the gospel is unstoppable. For Paul, he knew that the gospel is the good news of Jesus, and he knew that nothing can stop Jesus. And so when we say that the gospel is unstoppable, we are saying that nothing can stop Jesus. And because we know that, we get to live a life worthy of the gospel, which means we get to live differently because we know Jesus. And Paul gave us a couple ways on how to live differently. We talked about being humble or showing humility, which really just means thinking of others before we think of ourselves. We talked about letting our light shine in our actions. We talked about being a good friend. And we talked about witnessing or telling other people who don't know Jesus about Jesus. Paul reminded us, though, that it's not about perfection, which is really good news because we are not perfect, but it's more about the progress or the journey. It's more about taking the little tiny steps to look a little bit more like Jesus. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep trying. And then we talked about, but what happens when you're trying, but there's like conflict or arguments or disagreements? How do you do that? So we talked about how do we deal with conflict well? And then finally, last week, we were challenged with, and here's some really practical rhythms. And I hope that you chose one of those 3 R words and practice that this week. So as we jump into our final verses in Philippians chapter 4, verses 10 through 23, what we see here is that Paul reminds us that he has learned to be content in every situation. Right? He's saying no matter what happens, and it's kind of like what he was saying at the beginning, no matter what happens, we can be content. We can be safe and secure in who Jesus is and who we are because we know Jesus. And so, friends, I thought that I would bring along a book this week because I think sometimes we all need a good reminder that we can be content exactly who God created us to be. Because we're all on a journey together, right? And so I brought this book called Only You Can Be You. What Makes You Different Makes You Great. And it's by Nathan and Sally Clarkson. Let's read it together. Everyone's different, and that's okay. The maker of everything made us that way. Maybe you're loud and are bursting with life. Or maybe you're quiet and seem kind of shy. Which one are you? Are you more loud or are you more quiet? Maybe you're tall and can almost touch clouds. Or maybe you're short and can dart through the crowds. Maybe you're playful, artistic, and free. Or maybe you're organized, tidy, and clean. Maybe you love to play tag with your friends. Or maybe you create your own world of pretend. Maybe you're brave, you're the king of the hill. Or maybe you hide and can be very still. Maybe you're tough with big muscles and might. Or maybe you're tender and let yourself cry. Maybe you build forts with sheets hung on trees. Or maybe you dream of the stories you read. Maybe with blocks you build towers so tall. Or maybe you make clever gadgets for all. Maybe you're funny and tell silly jokes. Or maybe you're wishful and share all your hopes. Maybe you're fast and can win every race. Or maybe you're measured and keep a set pace. Maybe you're handy. With tools, you're a pro. Or maybe you plant seeds to help gardens grow. Maybe you're dark, or maybe you're light. Maybe you're big, or maybe you're slight. Each person's unique. Only you can be you. You're perfectly different. No other will do. Everyone's different, and that's okay, because the maker of everything made us that way. The end. I think that book is really helpful in reminding us that we can be content just the way that God made us. Whether He made us fast, whether He made us tall, whether He made us big or short or playful and creative or a combination of all of them. We can be content knowing that God made us just who we are. And because God made us just who we are, and because we know that the gospel is unstoppable, we can trust Jesus. We can continue to practice all of those rhythms and ways that we can that we've learned already in the series of Philippians of humility and letting our light shine, right? All of those compile because we get to be kids who follow Jesus, who are living with Jesus, loving like Jesus, and leading others to do the same. So kids, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next Sunday as we start a brand new series. And I can't wait to see you there. So, see you next Sunday.